Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the heat is on. And if you think it's been unusually hot, you're right. The record-breaking new report helping support global warming. Plus, the power play involving you and SDG&E. Did you pick the right pay plan for your home? And dogs are dying after making contact with toxic algae. But is there reason for concern here? KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Thursday, August 15th. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Ebony Monet. Another warm day of weather, and a new report shows July was the hottest month ever recorded on Earth. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the record is another sign of climate change.
Absolutely beautiful day here at the beach at La Jolla Shores. It's someplace to go when it's hotter than you might expect it to be, and that's exactly what happened in July. July was a record setter, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It was the hottest global temperature for a July on record. It was the 43rd consecutive July that was above average, and it's the 415th month in a row that the temperature has been above historical averages. And some people are saying this is just a sign of things to come. We had a chance to speak with Scripps Institution of Oceanography researcher Dan Cahan.
When you look at the annual cycle of temperatures on Earth, surface temperatures, July is the warmest month. And so we are seeing in the warmest month the warmest July ever, so that's probably an important metric.
Cahan says that there is a catastrophic future in store for us if we don't do something to change the path we're on before the end of the century. He says we can reduce the amount of fossil fuels we use and reduce the carbon-based economy that we have so that we're putting less carbon into the atmosphere and also into the ocean. If we do that, he says, some of these dangerous impacts can be reduced. At La Jolla Shores Beach, Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Some parts of the county are under an excessive heat warning. Some areas, in fact, were in the triple digits. Meteorologist Regina Miller gives us the forecast and some tips to stay cool.
Well, we have a lot of heat across Southern California and parts of the Southwest. In fact, some places going to be near records. In fact, we have an excessive heat advisory that continues into 9 p.m. this evening for the inland valleys near the foothills. So definitely dealing with a lot of heat. And you want to know the facts. If you want to know what kind of symptoms you could keep an eye out for heat-related illness, the signs: muscle stiffness or cramping, headache or lightheadedness or nausea or vomiting could be signs of a heat-related illness. Now, taking a look at the satellite and radar here over the last couple of hours, not really anything going on. We've got dry conditions tonight in the metro areas, partly cloudy at 65 degrees. And as we look at San Diego County's forecast here, we'll have some increasing late night clouds around Oceanside into San Diego, 65 for tonight. Borrego Springs at 81 and mostly clear. And in Mount Laguna, 60 degrees for tonight. For our Friday, we're going to keep the very warm conditions, in fact, hot across parts of interior Southern California and into parts of the Southwest. Now for San Diego County, we're going to see temperature, for example, Borrego Springs, you're at 111. Into Oceanside, 77 degrees with clouds giving way to sunshine. San Diego has some morning clouds around, giving way to some sunshine there. 83 in Mount Laguna. And along the coast, our 5-day forecast. On Saturday, partly sunny day, 76 degrees, partly sunny on Sunday, and 74. Starting to warm up towards early next week. Inland areas, we're going to be at 90 degrees with some sunshine for your Friday. Saturday, 86, partly sunny, and then 84 on Sunday under a partly sunny sky. In the desert locations, we have mostly sunny, warm conditions, 111 for Friday. Then for Saturday, sunlight, high temperature, very sunlit, I should say, 106, and then mostly sunny, 104 for Sunday. and then it starts to heat up for early next week. In the mountain areas, temperature of 79, so more comfortable on Saturday. Sunday is at 77 with lots of sun. I'm Regina Miller, KPBS News.
And on warm days like today, the AC is what many of us turn to for relief. But what will this mean for your bill under the new SDG&E billing plan? KPBS reporter John Carroll looks at how the time of use plan could affect you.
It's not bad if you're close to the coast, but for everyone else, the last couple of days have been on the warm side. At the same time, more and more of us are being moved to so-called time-of-use plans, which call on people to conserve energy between the hours of 4 and 9 p.m. SDG&E Communications Manager Wes Jones says it's all because of the increasing amount of renewable energy on the power grid.
There's a lot of renewables on the grid in the middle of the day, a lot of clean energy, but that's starting to decline later on in the day.
That decline means SDG&E has to fire up its natural gas power plants, and that energy is more expensive. Nearly everyone in SDG&E's service area is being moved onto the time-of-use plan, 575,000 since the big rollout began in March. Jones says 85% of people on the new plan have so far stayed on it. During a one-year pilot program, nearly all participants stayed on it. If you don't want to be on the plan, you must opt out. But Jones says SDG&E has a strategy so everyone can decide which plan is best for them without financial risk.
If you go on the plan and after 1 year you would have saved more on your original plan, we'll credit you back the difference.
Some customers who use solar power say the time of use plan is not good for them because they're already saving energy during those peak hours. I asked Wes Jones about that.
If you installed your system before like mid-2016, you actually have the opportunity to stay on a non-time of use plan for up to 20 years from the date you installed your system.
Jones says the overall idea is to get people to conserve during the hours when the availability of renewable energy dips. And he says if you can conserve during the 4 to 9 time window, you could see a smaller bill.
It's 19 hours of off-peak prices that are going to be cheaper than what you're getting on that old original plan.
SDG&E is the first investor-owned utility in the state to switch to a time-of-use plan. Others are expected to follow suit. Just think of it as the new normal when it comes to where power comes from and what you pay for it. John Carroll, KPBS News.
California's scientists have taken steps to warn pet owners about a toxic algae. From Arizona to North Carolina, there have been reports of dogs dying after making contact with the bacteria. California Water Board scientists had a dangerous advisory for a reservoir in Merced County. We checked here and there are no active advisories. There were 2 incidents of the algae bloom in the past 30 days at a lake in Oceanside and a pond near Scripps Ranch Library. Signs were posted at the time. Experts warn, though, if you see conditions anywhere that might be questionable, to avoid both human and pet contact with this blue-green water. A federal appeals court has dismissed an appeal by the Trump administration, instead siding with the lower court that ruled detained migrant children should be given toothbrushes, soap, and adequate food and water. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Adler explains today's decision.
The Trump administration was appealing a 2017 district court ruling that found children in U.S. Customs and Border Protection custody did not have access to adequate food, clean water, or basic hygiene items like a toothbrush. The judge found that those conditions violated a long-standing settlement known as the Flores Settlement Agreement, which requires the government to give children in federal custody safe and sanitary conditions. When the appeal was argued in front of the Ninth Circuit in June, a lawyer from the government was chastised by the panel of 3 judges.
It's within everybody's common understanding that, if you don't have a toothbrush, if you don't have soap, if you don't have a blanket, it's not safe and sanitary. Well, wouldn't everybody agree to that? Do you agree to that?
Well, I think there's fair reason to find that those things may be part of safe and sanitary.
Maybe are.
Despite the agreement and this new ruling upholding a central part of it, migrant children in detention continue to report unsanitary conditions, including a lack of food, holding cells brought to incredibly low temperatures, and unsuitable blankets. Customs and Border Protection has said it simply does not have the resources to comply with the ruling, given the influx of children arriving at the southern border over the past year. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
The debate over gun reform continues, yet some analysts on Capitol Hill say they're not sure if any significant regulation would have enough Republican support to pass. But as MJ Lee reports, that's not stopping Democratic presidential candidates from pushing the issue.
Dream big, fight hard.
Elizabeth Warren hitting the campaign trail in New Hampshire today, making her 13th trip to the Granite State this year.
What happens in 2020 won't just determine the direction of our country for the next 4 years or the next 8 years. This is going to be the direction of our country for generations to come.
Warren's visit comes a day ahead of President Trump's rally in the state, which he lost in 2016 by fewer than 3,000 votes. In a Facebook Q&A Tuesday, the Massachusetts senator was asked about the 1994 crime bill, which Joe Biden helped write, and critics say led to an era of mass incarceration. Warren did not mention her Democratic rival by name, but she made clear her disapproval.
It was just wrong. And it needs to be changed, needs to be rolled back, needs to be repealed.
Warren and other 2020 Democrats keeping their focus on gun violence, more than a week since the mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton that left more than 30 people dead.
You just might want to know, before someone can buy a lethal weapon, you just might want to know if they've been found by a court to be a danger to themselves or others.
Kamala Harris today unveiling a plan to confront domestic terror threats. Her proposal calls for mandating major online gun shops to perform background checks and allowing law enforcement to take away guns from suspected domestic terrorists. And Julian Castro, on the heels of last week's attack in El Paso, is calling out the president's racist and divisive rhetoric.
President Trump.
By airing this TV ad today on Fox News in Bedminster, New Jersey, where the president is spending time at his golf club.
As we saw in El Paso, Americans were killed because you stoked the fire of racists. Innocent people were shot down because they looked different from you, because they look like me.
According to CNN, there have been 18 mass shootings with 9 or more dead in the past 12 years, and no major legislation has passed in that time frame. The United Nations is stepping in to review San Diego's homeless problem. UN housing expert Leilani Farrar spent the day touring San Diego to see the city's housing crisis firsthand. She says the city has not done enough to protect the human rights of the homeless.
I'm hopeful that political will and that interest in the issue will translate into human rights outcomes. One of the things that I think the city needs to grapple with is like, what is an appropriate response to the situation? And I would really encourage them to better acquaint themselves with what their international human rights obligations are and to start using that to determine policy programs, ordinances, or lack of ordinances. I would love to see a moratorium on the criminalization of homelessness in this city.
Earlier this year, the San Diego City Council voted to ban people from living in their cars on city streets. Farha says that criminalizes homelessness and makes the city's homeless situation even worse. Now that a judge has pushed back Congressman Duncan Hunter's corruption trial to next January, some legal experts are weighing in on what this means to the case against him. Hunter and his wife are charged with illegally spending more than $250,000 in campaign funds. More now from KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman.
Nearly every time Hunter has had a hearing, dozens of protesters have followed, calling the 6-term congressman from Alpine a thief. But two former U.S. attorneys say it's not so easy to determine what's illegal when it comes to campaign finance.
A lot of this is gray. I mean, where does the political line end and the personal line begin?
Factually, it can be a little bit blurry.
Prosecutors say Hunter and his wife spent campaign cash on family vacations, groceries, and golf trips. Carol Lamb is former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of California.
It does appear to be a fairly strong case. That's a different question of, is it a slam dunk in terms of a criminal trial? And I think most experienced prosecutors would always be hesitant to say that any trial is a slam dunk, particularly a white-collar type of case.
Chuck Labella is also a former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of California and says perception of these cases does not always match reality.
The government is aware of these hurdles, and the defense is, but I don't think the general public is aware that how difficult these cases can be when they're purely personal versus political funds being used.
I paid it back. I announced it prior to the election. And I'm not going to make excuses for it.
When you have somebody who's been a campaign donor for you for years, and they are a fundraiser for you, and maybe you're not running for election, but you're going to go back to this person, and you know in your political career you're going to go back to this person, so you take them for a golf game, you take them for dinner. Well, isn't that cultivating a source? I mean, I think the defense is going to argue that's cultivating a source. And remember, campaign financing is not tax money. It's people who gave money to the congressman to promote himself.
In June, Hunter's wife took a deal from the government.
Ms. Hunter, have you had a chance to talk to your husband?
She pleaded guilty to conspiring with the congressman to misuse campaign funds. It's easy to see how that might strengthen the case against him.
The value of a cooperating defendant or a cooperating witness is they were on the inside, and so they sort of color in the picture for the jurors.
When you put a spouse on the stand, when you put mistresses on the stand, it's a jump ball for both sides. You don't know what's going to come out of the witness's mouth. When you put those kind of witnesses on the stand, they're explosive, potentially explosive.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Hunter has argued he will not get a fair trial in San Diego. He says negative media attention will sway jurors.
I've had some very high-profile cases that were on the front pages of our local papers for months, and when we brought the jurors, potential jurors, into the courtroom and asked how many of them had ever heard of the case or the allegations, we would only have a handful of people raise their hands.
Labella sees things differently.
The people who are reading this or hearing it on TV are prospective jurors, and so there's a real chance here that it's going to be difficult to pick a jury.
The case is scheduled to go to trial in January. That gives Hunter plenty of time to take a deal.
When the evidence seems to be very strong, there's usually maybe an approach by the defense saying, well, you know, he believes in his innocence, but what would you offer if he was willing to resolve the case?
I've done nothing wrong and haven't, and they've known that for 2 years.
But Hunter says he's a victim of a witch hunt and is ready to fight.
There's a trial. This means nothing. And the indictment is all they have. They only have what you've now seen. That's it. I've done nothing wrong, and I say bring the trial now.
I don't see these parties coming together and striking a deal because I think they're just so at odds with each other.
If the case does go to trial, will Hunter himself take the witness stand? Lamb says it's a tough choice.
If a defendant takes the witness stand and denies the allegations and then is found guilty anyway, that's probably going to hurt the defendant at the time of sentencing.
Both Lamb and Labella agree a decision to testify will likely come after the government finishes presenting its case.
If the defense believes that the government hasn't come close to proving its case, I think the chances of Hunter, Congressman Hunter testifying are slim.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Have a good day.
Hunter says he will appeal the case, arguing prosecutors are violating his constitutional rights as a member of Congress. A roller coaster ride on Wall Street today, but in the end, the Dow gained 100 points. This follows yesterday's massive 800-point drop, the worst of 2019. Investors are voicing concern for what lies ahead for the market. There are several negative signs. The yield curve flashed a recession warning Wednesday. The global economy is slowing down, and the trade war will continue to loom over the markets until it's resolved. It can be tough to make ends meet for many Americans, and a recent survey has found that on average, 59% of adults live paycheck to paycheck. The survey was conducted by Charles Schwab. Nearly half of participants say they carry credit card debt and struggle to pay the payments. Only 39% of people surveyed said they have an emergency fund. A new study shows the price of fun is rising. In fact, recreational activities are getting too pricey for a lot of people. In tonight's Consumer Watch, we take a closer look and find out the one thing experts say you should do to better afford your favorite pastimes.
Ditching the fun.
Are you skipping activities because they're simply too expensive? You're not alone. According to a new Bankrate survey, cost is keeping people from enjoying some local attractions and recreational activities. 68% of people surveyed said they skipped recreational activities in the past year because they weren't affordable. 43% said they simply don't have any leftover cash after paying everyday bills. The number one activity people skipped was a vacation. Money also prevented people from dining out with family and friends, going to concerts, and taking a trip to the amusement park, zoo, or aquarium. Those surveyed admitted to not attending sporting events or the movie theater. Families with young children are the most likely to miss out on recreational activities due to cost. For millennials, student debt is a big reason why they stay at home and away from recreational activities. But experts say there's a way to avoid all work and no play without going broke. Bankrate analysts suggest putting aside a portion of your income, no more than 5%, in a separate savings account with direct deposit. Just think of it as your fun fund. For Consumer Watch, I'm Mary Maloney.
Alzheimer's is a disease that destroys memory and other important mental functions. There are more than 3 million cases diagnosed in the U.S. each year. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar sat down with one doctor leading the fight against the disease.
Joining me to talk about this is Dr. Maria Carrillo from the Alzheimer's Association. Thanks so much for being with me.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So you've done some interesting research recently that shows the disparities between the Alzheimer's rates in stay-at-home moms versus career women. What did you find in that research?
Well, the Alzheimer's Association, that collects data every year on the prevalence of Alzheimer's in the United States, has always reported that 2/3 of the over 5 million Americans living with Alzheimer's are women. And so women are disproportionately affected. But this new research that just came out in July really points to the fact that women in particular that are married and have children, but also have a paying job outside of the home, have a reduced risk, actually really significantly reduced risk of Alzheimer's dementia. So that's really important to note, not only because, of course, women are disproportionately affected, but also because I think it points to the fact that we have to continue to maintain a healthy lifestyle, keep our mind engaged in order to try to protect ourselves as much as possible from dementia.
Yeah, and I was going to say that, finding out that research might make people wonder if there are lifestyle choices that they can make that might, make them more susceptible to having Alzheimer's. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and some great research that was also reported simultaneously told us that, depending on how many healthy lifestyle factors you follow, the more you follow, the greater your risk is reduced. That's really important as well. And I think, even for moms out there, whether you work outside the home or not, making sure you not only maintain that healthy lifestyle for yourself, but really for your family, because we know that brain development starts like even before the baby's born. So it's a life course event to keep our brain healthy.
And then tell me about what's the latest as far as detecting Alzheimer's. I know that there's been talk about potentially having some sort of blood test where you would be able to detect it, earlier. Is that something that exists right now?
Yeah, we are, so excited about the fact that technology has really been advancing so much. You can imagine that it has been a challenge to understand what's going on in the brain of a person, whether they have Alzheimer's or not, because the brain is such a protected organ, and as it should be, right? It runs everything. But now we have the technology to start to detect brain changes in, the smallest of proteins in blood. That's really exciting, and mostly right now it's in research space, not yet ready for the clinic, but in the future, I can imagine that when we have a potential treatment that really, really helps or slows down the disease, the earlier you catch that disease, the better your outcomes will be. And if we could catch it with something as simple and cheap as a blood test, that would really help our community. The Alzheimer's Association is in every community nationwide, including San Diego and Imperial counties. And the Alzheimer's Association can be found at alz.org/San Diego. There's so much support. No one should be, dealing with Alzheimer's alone. The Alzheimer's Association is here with information, referral services, and anything else, including support groups and groups for people who are affected by the disease as well as their caregivers. So please contact the Alzheimer's Association for help.
And do you have any other tips, because there isn't some sort of screen screening that can be done on a regular basis just for people who might be concerned if they want to know, it seems as though my loved one is showing signs or symptoms, what they can look out for?
Yeah, we have the symptoms of early Alzheimer's on the website. So alz.org is a great place to go. It also can give you the difference between kind of, being worried well or having a stressful day where you forget your wallet somewhere and something that might be a little bit more concerning that you might want to bring to the attention of your medical professional, right? And so that's really important for people because, again, the earlier you are diagnosed, the better, because there are currently some medications that can be prescribed to really manage the symptoms. And the earlier they're prescribed, the better the outcomes for the individual as well.
Great. Well, Dr. Maria Carrillo, I really appreciate your time in talking to me.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
The San Diego State Aztecs football team kicks off its season. It's this Saturday at the Aztec Fan Fest scrimmage. Injuries plagued the Aztecs last season. Today, Coach Rocky Long and several returning players gave the media a glimpse of what to expect for the upcoming season. Long is hoping things will do better for the Aztecs this year.
I think Juwan will have the same kind of year. If he stays healthy the whole year, we're going to have another great running back. And if he stays healthy the whole year, we'll have a much better football team, too.
Last year, the team finished with a 7-6 record. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.